And welcome back to yet another thrill-packed episode of Rodney and Alfie Talk Metal, where a guy named Rodney and a guy named Alfie talk metal. So, I am one half of that, and I'm cutting you off already. That's the whole precedence for the podcast. You've seen it. My work here is done.
End of show. That's it.
I am one half of that team. Rodney McG. You can find me on YouTube at Rodney McG, strangely enough. And the other half of this hosting combo is...
I am Alfie Williams, and you know where to find me. You know where to find Rodney. You've been here long enough. But if you're new to the channel, this channel, you can find me on Witchbase on YouTube. And that's where I live on the internet.
All right. And I hear you kind of got a hut there built on the internet now. You planning to expand? That's where you're living, or is it just a vacation home kind of thing?
I've been away for a little bit, but yeah, I'll be back and building new foundations.
Nice.
New foundation expansions, yeah.
Right.
New additions.
Oh, I always hated that band. Anyway, so you had a topic that was fairly interesting. You want to bring us in on it?
I do, yeah. I was just wondering, I thought it'd be a nice conversation to have. What bass lines influenced you to the point where you thought it opened brand new doors for you, expanded your horizons, gave you a new insight into music, or really leveled up your playing? And I just feel like there are some bass lines that just change the way you play. Just completely, like, just for example, when I was a kid, a teenager, and I was introduced to Jocko. So wow, what's this? He won't be appearing on the list, but I'm just saying that when you see Jocko for the first time, you're like, okay, this is different. So I wanted to bring up and just discuss with you what bass lines changed your life. And maybe I could share some of mine. And the viewers and listeners watching, I'd like to hear what changed your life too. The very first bass line that opened doors for me was the Offspring, Have You Ever? It's the first track on Americana. I was 11 years old. I hadn't yet picked up a bass. And I remember being like 11, 12, and we were in, me and one of my friends, we were in like I can't remember what kids call it back in those days. It was like, I think in America you would call it study hall, something like that. Study hall. So for me, it was a room full of computers. And at the time, the internet was coming into my school. So we're like messing around on the internet. I'm on the offspring.com. And they had clips of songs. And I said to my friend, here, listen to this. And he listened to Have You Ever? And there's a bass solo in this song. So it's not very common. I take it you don't listen to the Offspring, do you?
I'm aware of them. You can't help but have heard them.
No, and I don't mean Pretty Fly. I mean, like, the Offspring is probably my one of my top 3 favorite bands. Like, they are the biggest one for me, the one that got me into music. So with this song, there is a bass solo in there. It's nothing fancy, it's nothing special. It's just probably like 8 bars of a bass solo. Pretty simple stuff. But when you're a kid, you go, wow, that sounds cool. What is that? I said to my friend, I'm going to learn that. And like 6 months later, I got a bass, and I did. And for me, that was the first one that opened the doors for me, blew the bloody doors off, as Michael Caine would say. And yeah, that's the start of my bass playing journey. Nice and easy to learn. Sounds really good. I still play it to this day. Like, it's one of my favorite Offspring songs, and has been for 20 odd years. So that's the one that really drove me to learning the bass.
Nice. Very cool. I get that. I guess my first thing isn't so much that the bass line was incredible. And I have to preface it as to why it has the impact. I've talked about it on my channel before. But early on, for a while, I had 2 much older stepbrothers than myself, only for a few years. But so when I was really young, they introduced me to a lot of the stuff they came up on. So, 6, 7 years old, I'm getting introduced to, Van Halen, Black Sabbath, Rush, stuff like this. So, I got this more advanced kind of rock education at a really young age. So I started listening, much deeper and a lot than I think a lot of kids do at that age. And that doomed me to a lifetime of poverty in music. But, so I was aware of some things. Like I started understanding what a lot of people don't at that age, like the difference between bass and guitar and that type of thing. I'd heard Giza Butler and NIB and things like that. And I think at that development stage, though, I was like, oh, guitar and bass. And they were kind of somewhat could be on a similar plane.
Right.
Bass was tucked a little bit back. And the Rush I had heard was still really early stuff like Fly By Night and things. So it was still very much more of a classic rock type of thing. The first time I heard Unchained from Van Halen, that one punched me in the head because you've got Eddie Van Halen, I mean, legend, and Unchained was one of their heaviest songs. He plays that in a drop tuning and they're already in E flat. So he's playing like D flat drop. So, I mean, he's playing in a key that's used a lot in modern metal.
Yeah.
And it's one of the all-time great hard rock bordering metal riffs, just that intro of him just playing that riff is, you can't help but, so I'm listening to, this kind of God king of rock and metal and just, worshiping at the altar there. But if you're familiar at all with that song, that riff starts in, and then there's this roll up of the drums as they kind of build into it. And then the bass hits on the downbeat. And the effect of it is that single bass note that comes in just blows Eddie out like into the next room or something. It's just this boom, 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 just him hammering this one staccato note. And I just had never heard anything like that before. I was just like, what the hell is that guy doing that just knocked the king of rock guitar back on his ass? I was just like, that thing is like an earthquake tuned to a note. And it just took over the song, and then from that part that he's playing like the verse parts and everything, but really you're just hearing that bam, 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 bam underneath of it. And yeah, it was just such a kick in the balls. There was just this part of me that went, the earth shifted on its axis when that happened. I want to do that.
Wow.
I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy who the guitar player could be doing all this stuff and I come in with one note and just, Godzilla foot stomp him into the pavement. It just completely knocked me back. And I went, I think that one might be the one for me. That absolutely blew the floor out of the room.
That's so cool. Like, obviously, like you said, you hear the difference between guitar and bass, but most kids growing up, of one of which I was not, was looking at the guitarist and saying, I want to be a guitarist. I want to shred. I want to do all this stuff. But like you or I went, I want to play these low notes. I don't know where that comes from, but like I get that. And it's just maybe we're just tuned differently. Literally, like we're just like we hear the low notes and go, I want to do that.
Yeah, or it's just you find your home. What appeals to your sensibility. And mine was to be able to just clean sweep everybody off the stage and
vibrate off.
And I think my favorite part of it was he didn't have to compete. He just played one note. And that note was so savage in what it did to the song that the whole band just kind of had to sit down.
How quickly did you learn it after picking up the bass? Was it like the first thing you went to, or took a while?
No, that was the thing, is that it was one note, so I wasn't really worried about it. I didn't feel like, even though I loved the song, it wasn't something that made me sit and go, I want to play this.
Right.
It was, I want to do what this instrument does.
It's more of a mindset shift.
Yeah, totally.
Brilliant.
So that would be my first one, and probably the earliest development one.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, like I said, it's just such a mindset shift. For me, like my next leveling up from the Offspring, it's really weird when you think about music, like your gateway band. And like I said earlier, the Offspring is my gateway band. And then I started branching out into metal. I won't go into it too much. It's a bit out of base stuff, but the old peer-to-peer networks like LimeWire, Kazaa, things like that. There was one prior to that called Audio Galaxy. I don't know what year that was, 2002, 2003. And on there, don't ask me how, but I managed to download Metallica, For Whom the Bell Tolls. Ride the Lightning was there. Some Unforgiven 2 was there, like random songs. I don't even know why, but I picked up these songs. I didn't know who these bands were. I didn't know what they looked like. Picked up Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden was the next step in my musical taste. So from the Offspring to Iron Maiden, and name any Harris song pretty much. It's just mind blowing. But for me, Hallowed Be Thy Name was another one that just took me to the next level. At this point, I'm playing bass. I'm comfortable with bass. I play pick, I play finger, and just playing in E. And I don't know, maybe you'll be able to help me with this. I'm not sure what scale he's using, but just this sort of running of like, maybe it's like a minor type thing, just what he does from like 7 to 9, next string 7, this hammering on, hammering off kind of thing.
Yeah,
the Harris stuff.
Box.
Right. That sort of thing. And just the way he moves up and down the neck, especially on Hallowed Be Thy Name, very simple stuff, very easy to learn, sounds great and metal as fuck. And just like, I didn't know I could do this. And it's different coming from punk rock to Iron Maiden. And it's just, again, it felt like such a journey, another door that opened up. Wow, I can play stuff like this too. And he does a lot of the chord stuff. Harris plays chords, the 3 notes, a power chord on bass, essentially. So, okay, I can play power chords too. Great. And that sort of thing. And I presume around the same time, I started to play guitar too. So, oh, great, power chords. This is great. I can play guitar. This is really, straightforward. So all of this is unlocking in my brain. And the Steve Harris runs, the picking, he doesn't pick, but I guess the first and the fifth note, all of this sort of stuff. I get just so many easy techniques that just unlock for me. That is completely different. So that was the next level for me in practicality. And again, like that just felt like a stepping stone. Great, I can play bass, got it. Now I'm learning how to be creative with it, and that was the next step for me.
Yeah, I've got a Harris thing that I'll get to, but I'll put some space in between ours. But I definitely get and understand that. But I think as far as, how can I say, really shaping my idea of what bass could be as far as in totality and its what you could pull off with it, I would have to go with SATO off of Diary of a Madman from Ozzy. It's one of the, not radio songs or something like that.
Yeah.
But Bob Daisley became a huge influence on me in that, his bass contributions, Randy Rhoads is a god, but those songs would not carry without Daisley.
No.
And he is as crucial to the structure of those things as Randy is. And that song, Ozzy is basically irrelevant in that song. His vocals could get taken off and it just wouldn't matter, really. Sit down and listen to that song, and it actually evolves from the beginning. Every verse, Randy starts playing more and more differently and more loose and taking liberties with what he's doing during the chord arrangement and adding effects. And Bob is just shredding from one end to the other of that song. He's bouncing I think it was the thing of showing me that the things I thought were simplistic about bass could be done in a way that was not simplistic and was actually hard as shit. Bouncing octaves and things, and he's doing it so quickly and ripping, not just the octave where your hand is, but flying up the neck to get the next 2 octaves. And it's just a masterclass in constructing bass lines. And I actually tuned into that before I picked up bass.
Okay.
I used to listen to that song at night constantly when I would go to bed and just listen over and over again. And I knew that song so well that when I finally got a bass teacher, he thought it was strange that he goes, I'm just showing you. He goes, you know this song better than me. He said, I'm just showing you where to put your fingers as they make those sounds.
Yeah.
And it really was that way, that I could sing every nuance of all the little bass parts. I knew it, and there's a lot in it. But I knew it so well, he didn't have to train me and like, oh, here's what he's doing during that part. I knew exactly what he was doing. He just had to show me how to move my fingers to make it do that.
Right.
And yeah, it was, SATO was right up there. And then, that led me to like, I don't know, and things like that. Just learning how a more improvisational feel could be used, and also being able to play a lot, but serve the song. Where usually you get one of the two. It's either really rudimentary, boring playing that is to serve the song, as they call it, or holding it down, which every person that says that to me, I want to hold them down like underwater until the bubbles stop. Or overplaying something. And nobody ever seems to make that disconnect in between. Serving the song can also be boring if you mean it in a just zero contribution way. And it's only overplaying if it wrecks the song. Playing a complex part is not overplaying if that's what the song calls for. And yeah, Bob, I mean, he wrote a lot of that music, and he's written some of the, the greatest classic metal songs in history, and he plays his ass off. So that to me has stuck with me the rest of my life, and why I like playing more advanced things and stuff is I learned from him, you don't have to make a choice. You can be a badass and just shred bass, but still write a song. And so definitely SATO was the gateway to that idea for me.
That's an amazing progression, and I totally understand what you mean about serving the song. And I too, I wouldn't say that would be unfair. Bob Daisley isn't in like my top 5, but I listened to Bark at the Moon over and over, and I'm not as familiar with Diary of a Madman, but Bark at the Moon for me, I think, had a similar effect where it just sounds different and not what you expect on bass. So I totally get what you mean. And also listening to a song over and over and not really sure how it transcribes onto an instrument. I feel like the same way with drums. Like, I think I might have, in another life, I would have been a drummer, because I can hear drum beats, and in my head, like, I know what toms and what snare, what drums are being hit, and I can see the pitch change, if that makes sense. And like, if you put me in front of a drum kit and say, that one's the high pitch one, that one's the low pitch one, I go, oh, okay, and it probably unlocked for me. So it's the same sort of thing. Looking at Bark at the Moon, I haven't listened to it for a little while, but like all of these songs, I just, similar to your story, like just the same for me, where it just, I don't know, it plays differently in my head. It's not punk rock. It's not your chugga chugga metal. It's different. And we always talk about Bob, and I too hold him in great regard. And, I love the Bark at the Moon album probably as much as you love the Diary of a Madman album. It's just, so I totally understand. And Bob is a great inspiration to get you to that next level. It's perfect. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add about Bob?
Only 7 or 8 more hours worth, but I'll let you roll on with yours.
Yeah, okay. You mentioned it earlier. Giza Butler. That was sort of like the third step for me. Got down Harris, and I think you even said NIB. Like my uncle gave me a cassette of, it might have been Greatest Hits or something. I was like, oh, what's this? And just put it on begrudgingly. He's like, listen to this. So there's Paranoid. Oh, okay, that's cool. That's radio friendly song. Cool. NIB. Ooh, what's that? And like somehow I managed to figure out it was bass. So what is this? This is crazy. And like that song, like again, going back to sort of like Harris gave me like the creativity and the chops. This was all about songwriting. And go, you can do that on a bass. And maybe in a similar vein to Bob Daisley, you're serving a song. You can just play different stuff that's not conventional, but still serves the purpose of the song. And then, you dig into other Black Sabbath stuff, the earlier stuff predominantly. And it's just, again, like now I'm leaning more into songwriting than bass chops.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like, you learn mechanical stuff and then you go into writing, if that makes sense. And it opens your mind on a musical level rather than just playing as a bassist. And I think Giza Butler, I think he wrote songs or something like that. I know he had his own solo album, but I think he had contributions to Black Sabbath. So again, it's just another level for me of the chops, the writing, and mechanical stuff. Like he too was all around the bass doing different things, and it wasn't just following the root notes of the guitar. And I suppose it's more blues driven too. There's a lot of blues roots in there, which I hated blues when like my bass teacher would say, do your blues scale. I hate the blues scale. I can't stand the blues scale. Do your 12-bar blues. Do I have to? So yeah, it was a different interpretation of blues for me. It was, I guess, the old and the new, if that makes sense. So Giza Butler for, I want to say obvious reasons, but you sort of need to explain yourself. But yeah, Giza Butler was my third most influential bassist and level for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's the prototype for so many bassists that followed him. So I've always kind of made the argument of people are like, well, I wasn't that influenced by Geezer. I'm like, yes, you were. Because anybody you listen to was influenced by Geezer. So, he arguably, at least in metal, kind of created that style of riff-based things and then very pentatonic box lead riffing. It's him and Harris are, barely a stone's step away from each other.
Yeah.
But on the Harris thing, for me, it wasn't about one song. I have to it is and it isn't. But because I'm aware of him, I'm listening to a lot of his stuff, but it's kind of like for me at least, it was less that there was one song that Harris did, because he kind of had the same effect all the songs he was on.
Yeah.
One thing that, of course stuck out was like the intro to Wrathchild or something. I'm like, solo metal bass. But the one that really hit me and where I sat down and went like, okay, this is Harris on crank. And because I was always into faster things, like that's why so early I got into the thrash and speed stuff and everything, because whatever was the fastest song on any album I bought was the one I liked the best. I always had that thing of, the adrenaline push. And at my level, there was a complexity to it and stuff, so I really gravitated to Aces High.
Yes.
Because it had everything he does in it. It opens with the chords.
Yeah.
It does the fast gallop feel. It's got the riffs in it, the fills, it's on 10 for Iron Maiden for that whole song. And when I sat down, I was like, which one of these do I really want to pull? Basically, I learned Wrathchild, but just the opening riff, because, it was the part I was interested in. And that's 90% of the song. But, with Aces High, I was like, okay, it was a bit kind of like a penis measuring contest too, being pretty young and going like, hey, if I can go around school saying I can play Aces High finger style. That's right. You know,
Totally.
I got a little something. And Flight of Icarus, yeah, sure. Oh, that's good work, man. Aces High, I will take your seat, sir.
Yeah.
You will get up.
Mm.
So for all those reasons, that one, at least in that kind of thing, was establishing that kind of early classic and power metal thing, and a little bit of that same effect. It was a less complicated Daisley, but going, I can be prominent all the way through this music, even when it's flying by.
Mm.
So, yeah, I'd have to go with that one.
I'd say, like, yeah, Aces High, another one that blew me away. But the one that keeps coming to mind for me is Hallowed Be Thy Name, like I said. But Aces High, obviously I'm playing all of these songs at the same time, but Aces High is like, I'm just sitting there playing, thinking, oh, I just can't keep the same pacing with the song. And yeah, I had to struggle to play it, to catch up with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally get it. Yeah, Aces High, just like, and I can see why you'd like it. It's just 10 all the way through.
No,
And I love it.
Aside as a nerd moment. Back before the virus that shall not be named hit and screwed everything up, I did a performance at one of the bass shows at the NAMM show in Los Angeles. And you got to do like a solo performance, and I had written basically 5 songs of kind of instrumental type of stuff that we were doing. And my cat refuses to settle down here. It's like shedding all over me and pouncing everywhere.
Everything's shaking.
Yeah. That's what a fat butt does. Pulling my headphones off. But I decided that because a lot of the guys I was playing with, and this isn't a slam, but, they play more the type of stuff when you think bass instrumentalist. Very kind of funky, jazzy, little bit of rock type of thing. I was the only metal guy who had ever played at this show.
Okay.
But I was complimented. I mean, like the year before, it was like Jeff Berlin and guys like that. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, if Jeff Berlin's played this, I got to do this. So, most of the stuff I was playing was hard rock and metal, but then I decided I was just going to kind of break the mold and do something. So, I invited my friend Nikki Stringfield from the Iron Maidens and Patrick Kennison from Lita Ford's band up to play Aces High with me. So that was an interesting break in the middle of that show. It was kind of funny because I could see people were taken back, and about halfway through, I could see every somewhat older dude in the audience having this like, yeah, moment where I was like,
thank God, I've been waiting for this moment. Yeah,
it's like they didn't know if it was okay to go, oh my God, dude's doing, classic metal songs or something. But yeah, I've got a recording of it. If you follow me on Facebook at all, if you look at my videos and stuff, I've got some uploads of that. But we're in there tearing it up, and like halfway through, you just hear from the side, yeah. So these guys start really getting into it. So that was a lot of fun. But I specifically picked that one because of that. I would have picked SATO, but there was nobody who was going to get that song down. But yeah, that was kind of off that line and kind of fun. But yep. So it must have been influential if, a couple decades later, I'm playing this thing at a bass showcase somewhere. And
brilliant.
Really handing people a left turn.
That's funny. The reaction that's certain songs give people, and I had almost an identical moment with someone shouting "yeah" to a bass solo when I was younger, like when I was 16 or something. I was quite arrogant. It's like, I'm a bass player, I got this, and like I've mellowed out a little bit, but I was very sure of myself as a bass player when I was 16, and I used to go to these, I think we call them, it's kind of like a, not battle of the bands, but you get put into groups and you play with people and you would play together. You'd have, everyone would perform together and show what you've done throughout the week kind of thing. And I was like, I'm going to start the show with a bass solo. And this is my next bass line, coincidentally. It was My Friend of Misery by Metallica.
Nice.
That Newstead, that Newstead lick. And I started playing that, and like a guy in the audience, yeah! So I totally get that. I too have that on tape. That's just,
Nice.
playing to my ego when I was a kid. So yeah, My Friend of Misery, that was the next one for me. And again, I'm now leaning away from the mechanical stuff into songwriting. And Jason Newsted, his time to shine, finally in Metallica. You can hear the bass on the Black Album mostly. It's unique, it's different. Again, it's a different way of playing. Like I guess it's upstroke. I would say it's like upstroke picking kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Different, not really seen from how I grew up listening to music. And obviously there's loads of tracks. I say, like, okay, a handful of tracks you could pick from Metallica, from Cliff Burton and Jason Newsted. But for me, I think I feel like I'm 50-50 on who was most influential for me in terms of Metallica bassist. Half Cliff, half Jason. I don't really lean one way or the other. For me, Jason Newsted was as influential to me as Cliff Burton. And again, just a lot of Jason's licks just blew my mind, and especially My Friend of Misery. And that kind of, I don't know how you would categorize it, but just the creativity of it. It's not, to my mind at the time, it's not really a normal bass part.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you would categorize it. It's just sort of, it's not really chords. It's not really picking as such. It's weird. It's a weird amalgamation of things. And I haven't seen anything else like that in that sort of caliber since, and especially not in Metallica. I think, I'm going to go out on a limb. I might not be sure, but I think, oh God, his name is getting, I think Robert's tried to bring some of that in there, but it's not been as hard hitting as the Black Album, especially not the Black Album.
Gotcha. Yeah,
What do you
makes a lot
think?
of sense. That's interesting because Newsted, for me, he's always one of the people that I've pointed to where I don't look at him as like, he's one of those people that I use as an example, and this isn't a slam either way, but that defines kind of where that border is in between what I consider a bass player and a bass guitarist. That there's a subtle difference in between them. And that, a bassist tends to stick to a very different role that only occasionally finds like a unison with guitar. Whereas a bass guitarist is someone who starts with the guitar part first. I think that would be the best explanation. It's like a bass player, I feel like most of the time starts with a union with the drums and then leans to guitar. Whereas a bass guitarist starts with the guitar and then leans out.
Right.
And Newsted, to me, is very much a bass guitarist. And Cliff was a bassist.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
In that, like, when his Newsted's attack and the way he played, he followed the riff a lot. Not a slam. There's not a lot you can do with a number of Metallica things. But his attitude and the way he attacked the bass was very guitar-like. So some of the things that maybe sound odd, it's probably because he's taking a guitar, a partially guitar thinking and applying it to bass. So you come up with some, somewhat different options. You can hear approaches like that, like the intro to Sober from Tool or something. That to me is a bass guitar part. It's not so much a bassist would come up with it. It's all based on, pick scratches and that type of thing. And that approach isn't, married to pick or, finger style either. Like John Entwistle from The Who said on a number of occasions, he said, I am a bass guitarist. He's like, and he was, the original Thunder Fingers. So it doesn't limit there, but he was always like that. Like, I was, again, because I listened to this stuff so early on and things, I was aware of Newsted before Metallica.
Yeah.
And when I heard the opening to Hammerhead from Flotsam and Jetsam, that is a bass guitar part, but
Uh-huh.
it is a badass bass guitar part. I mean, if you're looking for some good, a way to play bass that is just flying by and standing out, Newsted's intro on Hammerhead from Flotsam and Jetsam is mwah. Just I heard that, and I had one of those impressions like you listen every once in a while, because I mean I was really young when I heard that, and I was like, oh, I've totally picked the wrong career path. Oh, this is, what in the hell is this guy doing? You know, these little fills in it, and Jesus, yeah, he just absolutely killed it. It's such a great part. But so yeah, I mean, I could see that as far as you know, tuning into that, and definitely, I mean, Black Album was, you know, the first time we really got to hear him do his thing.
Totally. Yeah, I would agree with a lot of points that you've made there. And it's funny you brought up how he attacks the bass, and I think he even said it himself. Like when I done my Newsted bass rig, there's an interview of him. I think it was with EMG. It was talking about EMG pickups, and he was talking. He literally said how he attacks the bass. I attack the bass, and you're dead right. That's what he does. He has this attitude of how he plays bass. And again, with the guitars, I need to get it clear in my head. Without pictures, I can't even visualize this. So a bass guitarist mainly follows the guitar, and a bassist follows drums, let's just say.
Yeah, it's where they start.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
like their ear will tend to work with the drums first and then lean to the guitar.
Okay.
Whereas a bass guitarist starts with the guitar players and then leans out.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I would put Newsted in that camp, I think, just from opinion rather than any fact. And again, you know, Metallica is a guitar-heavy driven band. And at that point in time when he was there, that's what he was doing. In comparison to Cliff Burn, again, an influence, but he would be a bass guitarist where the fingerstyle play, it's completely different beast than playing with a pick on bass. Do you know what I mean? The attitudes are different. So, yeah, I think not that Jason was pigeonholed, but he only had a couple of routes available to him, and I think that's what I mean when I was influenced by him. I picked up on how to differentiate yourself from the guitar rather than listening to drums, the attitude and how to play. And I think that's probably what opened doors for me, because I think around that time I was in a punk band, a punk rock band. I guess I took a lot of the attitude from Newsted. And like I said previously, there is an element of following the guitar to a degree and trying to break out and do your own thing. And I think that's kind of where I drew my inspiration. I was in a punk band and I wanted to do my own thing and not just play the root notes. So I kind of took the Jason Newsted attitude and put it into a punk rock band.
Got it. Makes sense. Pretty cool. Let's see. So I think moving from there, mine's going to be somewhat not metal, but I find the attitude in it is what struck me. I, of course, was aware of and grew up on Rush. And I mean, you can't listen to Rush and not be aware of bass. It's, I mean, and how many parts are there? Limelight, and, you know, all these things. YYZ, things like that. But strangely, the bass line that got me and made me go, that this is something I need to tune into and learn, was the song Digital Man.
What album is that on?
That is on Signals.
Okay.
And it's all bass. Like, it's so, the bass dominates the song. I mean, there is absolutely nothing the guitar could be doing that would be important if the bass wasn't there. And that really struck me, because it wasn't just like, oh, there's a lot of playing going on or something like that. The bass is carrying the melodic structure of everything. And the fact that there's fills in every phrase that never get repeated.
Wow.
So it's kind of a bitch to remember.
Yeah.
I actually had to sit down and really learn the song. There was after Neil Peart passed a little bit ago, in Nashville, they were doing this fundraiser and tribute to Rush, and they were going to, they take the money and give it to foundations for the type of ailments that he had. And they had, they put together groups and bands to come up and play some of their songs. And one of the ones I got assigned to was Digital Man. And it reminded me how goddamn hard that song is. And it's not just, like a technical thing, although there's some wrist breaker riffs in it. It's every single turnaround has a fill in it, and they never repeat. So you've got to remember, an average, of like 4 to 8 different complex fills per verse. And it introduced a couple of other things too that I thought were really interesting. Like, I don't like reggae, anything like that. And there are parts that have like a bit of a reggae swing in it, but it also, during certain sections of it, has an almost jazz blues breakdown feel. And that's where I first, I understood swing, because even like early Van Halen, Ozzy, stuff like that, some of the things that made those bands sound great and why you don't hear it as much today is the swing feel. But this had a really hard swing to it, like really down in there. And hearing, that come out of stuff, and it's soloed bass. I mean, there's like no guitar going on and just this swing bass part. And the way that he locked in with the drums, that it really is, I hate to use the term a second time in one thing, but like a master class on blending, using different styles and blending them into a rock or hard rock format. And then having a song, realizing that a song could be utterly revolved around bass. That not bass playing a lot, but the guitars carrying the melody. I mean, it would not surprise me at all if this song were utterly completed by Geddy and he just handed it to Alex and was like, do your thing over it.
Yeah.
The bass is that dominant in that song. And that one knocked me back to the point where I went, this is like a 6-minute bass solo that is just organized into verse and chorus parts. It's fantastic. And I love the fills in it, and it's stuff I would never think. And, it was also one of these things where this goes, pretty far into technique and stuff. I won't drag it, but a completely different way of looking at the fingerboard and hand positioning and everything else. The way I developed a lot of my technique was from this very strict kind of one finger per fret way of looking at scales and things. And Geddy comes from something almost completely opposite. So a lot of when I tried to figure out the stuff by ear, the things seemed weird or like I couldn't play it right because I'm trying to play it using fingerings that just do not match him in any sense. And there's him and a couple of players that, even though technically I can play as fast, or even, not that it's a speed thing or I would ever put myself against him, but I can play things that are technically more difficult than what I've heard on a Rush album. But there's some of his stuff that's really difficult for me to play because I just don't think that way. And I don't arrange the place I would find a certain note in the scale. He plays at a completely different angle on a different string, and it just messes my head up. So it showed me the validity of other ways of thinking. And yeah, it was just like it blew open all these things of like, you can attack a scale from a different perspective completely. You can write a whole song on a bass, and you can pull in other influences and things you wouldn't think would fit or be appropriate and still rock the hell out. And that just blew my mind with it. And I thought it was kind of like my Aces high for Rush. It's like, yeah, I'm aware of like Body Electric and Free Will and, you know, like I said, all the classic songs and everything. But this one was so just, you know, almost like everybody relax. Geddy's taking this one.
So take the afternoon off, guys. I got this.
Yeah. And I just went, okay, I remember listening to that one over and over to get my head inside of it. And so that one had a huge influence on, you know, songwriting and just, again, like mentally in 4 or 5 different things that were entirely new approaches to the instrument and how it could be used. Oh, not so much metal, but very definitely something that knocked bass open to me. And to me, that's kind of a metal attitude, and that the playing in it is really aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that I have to kind of pull that one from outside and bring it in.
I know Geddy Lee and Rush isn't lumped into metal, but I still think when you talk about the greats, Geddy is just in there, and you know, you can't not include him. Mm-hmm. I got introduced to Rush only because of the bass rig video that I done. So only a couple of years ago.
Wow.
I'm not really sure why it wasn't in my upbringing. Like I said, I kind of had a narrow focus of punk rock and power metal to a degree. Progressive rock wasn't really in my orbit. Just wasn't really there. So I got into Rush a couple of years ago. So I was still learning all of these things. Mm-hmm. And of course, like, no doubt, Geddy is a god. And where do I want to start with this? I think playing, like you said, playing scales in a different way. I don't know about you, but when I'm playing bass, I always think top down, and I sort of mean like bottom string down, where a major scale is, it can only go, you know, down the fretboard. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of locked into that mentality. Like for me, yeah, it's sort of like your hands can only go a certain way. Like, I don't know, an expectation or a physical muscle memory of it. It's weird to sort of put your hands in different positions backwards or something like that. So even that's alien. Mm-hmm. What else is it? Like changing the fills for every time the lick comes around. I get that too. Again, you when you're trying to be a bass player and differentiate yourself from the guitarist or whatever, you're trying to do different things. And I can see how that would be influential. Like, I don't want to keep repeating myself. I want to make my own statement. So I get that as well. Like I've done similar things where you don't want to do a bass solo every time the verse comes around, but you want to do something, you want to mark it and make it different. And again, I haven't even touched Geddy Lee's bass lines because I am so intimidated by his technique, how well he plays, his proficiency. Like, I know I'm going to suffer. I think I tried, what did I try? It might have been YYZ. So no, I can't just shrug this off. This needs to be a focused lesson to learn this properly. You can't just dive into it and like, I sight read tabs because most songs you can do, I play along, whatever, it's fine. You can't sight read YYZ. You got to sit down and pay attention to it. There is no fluffing it. Mm-hmm. So like I said, yeah, Geddy Lee is a beast, and I'm just highly intimidated by him in his bass playing. Like I don't even want to tackle it. so yeah, well done for at least attempting it and getting it right to a degree.
Yeah, well, it's the old, journey of 1,000 miles. You got to start with one chunk. I'm sure Geddy wasn't actually born with a bass, although there's rumors of pictures. But he very much had to start from the same place with his influences, and one chunk at a time, and building things up. And it's you isolate a few seconds of music and you play it till you got it, and then you go for the next one.
Oh no, and when you zoom out, it just seems like he's got everything figured out. And you're right, at one point he was like, what did I do again? And writing it down and doing it over. Mm-hmm. I just can't think of any bassist that has that mindset these days. I guess you would call it a progressive background. Mm-hmm. Variations in the song verse, variations in the songs compositions and I don't know what we call it, licks.
Yeah.
Structure, all of those things, just like not being run of the mill, being different. And I think that probably comes from a progressive mindset, where, like I say, I'm kind of locked into the metal and the punk rock thing. And it's all very traditional, if that makes sense. So I haven't seen very many players like Geddy in music today. And I think we're about to do one. It's been a long time now. I can't just be Geddy. It needs to be more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is very long overdue. So, next on your list,
Flea, Red Hot Chili Peppers. Again, growing up when I was 15, 16, Chili Peppers had Californication out. That was massive when I was younger. And I think Californication was my gateway into Chili Peppers. From there, Give It Away, just everything Flea done was influential to me. And I even remember, again, going back to the band, it was called Live Jam, where you play with different people of your own age. It went on every year. So that was, it was like every school holidays. So in the Easter, the summer, the autumn, there'll be another event. And the very first one I went to, me and my best friend, we've been playing together. We've been playing Californication, and we went there, and there were these two kids who thought they were hot shit, and they were friends, and they were playing. I can't remember what they're playing, and they were just jamming or messing around, but they thought they were awesome. And like me and my friend looked at each other and went, "Let's play." And we started playing Californication, nailed it, and they were like, "Okay, we got some competition." So for me, Flea, again, I know Flea is a bit stereotypical. Everybody sort of says Flea this and Flea that. But again, he opened so many doors in terms of playing around the neck, musical craftsmanship, slap. There's so much in there for Flea. And I know it's not metal, but it opens your mind on how to play around the bass. Like Give It Away, an airplane, I think.
Okay.
Playing from the top of the bass down to the bottom and back up again, that was unusual for me. Starting out bass, you just sort of play up here and don't really move around, but top to bottom, that kind of thing. Yeah, it was just mind blowing for me at the time. So Flea is another one for me, big influence. That's probably my top 5. What do you think for your final one?
My final one's going to be same player, but a part 1 and part 2 kind of thing, kind of exhibiting the same effect. But again, when I was first developing technique and kind of, I think you start to pick a road that you're going down, and who you're following. I started actually learning a lot from the shred guitar players because there just wasn't that much for bass.
Yeah.
And especially really early on, and some of the stuff that, when I was just understanding the instrument and just picked it up and everything, it was during the true, I think some might call it golden era, but of the late 80s guitar gods.
Yeah.
And everything was about that guitar player, and it was the first like lead guitar domination thing. I mean, even like we talked about what were considered hair and glam bands and stuff, but even back then in those bands you had like George Lynch, Warren DeMartini. I mean, these guitar legends of virtuosity that are in, like, that was the level you had to be in just to play Rat songs.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Like, everybody had to have this guitar god going on. And then I don't know, I know a bit before you, but there was a label based out of LA called Shrapnel.
I don't know that one there.
It's where all the shred gods came from. Like, you first heard like Paul Gilbert and Racer X, Jason Becker, Marty Friedman, Vinnie Moore. This is still the height of Yngwie Malmsteen. It's like, just these, they were just coming out of everywhere. And that was the thing. It was like this nuclear arms race of shred going on. And just these phenomenal guitar players. And so I started listening to and trying to learn ideas from these guys a lot because, I mean, there just wasn't anything like that on bass. And seeing if I could adapt it. And then it was actually through somebody I had sent a message to at Shrapnel and going like, is there anybody doing this for bass? And the guy sent me back 2 names. And one was Wally Voss, who passed away, unfortunately, but this amazing tapping dude. But the other was Billy Sheehan. And this was before Sheehan was known. He was still in Talus. And and I started noticing about then, like, you would start getting like Guitar World issues or something like that. And I'm going, this guy pops up, but I've never heard of him. And then I went and got the album just to hear it. And when I heard, I never can remember the name of this damn solo because it's basically just Sheehan backwards. So it's numbers. It's like 3V77, whatever. But his first bass solo. And I spent like a week shoveling the feces out of my pants. It was just such a next level of, stuff where I was like, I was into advanced stuff and everything, but hyper advanced to me was Getty. And then I heard this thing and I went, oh, this is a whole other thing going on here. And it was exactly what I had asked for. It was like a guy who could finger style bass out shred many guitar players. And I just went, I didn't know, because you never hear it. You just don't even think it's an option. And this guy, I mean, he's doing like classical style chords and harmonics and this unbelievable tapping stuff. And it's played so aggressively. I mean, he is beating the hell out of that bass. And I just went, it was almost like the level of which you were a virtuoso just got cut in half. And there's this whole other step that went in, and I just went, I almost don't know what to do at this point. It seemed inhuman to me. I used to have suspicions that the thing was sped up. I just, because again, it's like I'd never heard somebody play that goddamn fast. I mean, of course, there's like Jocko and stuff like that, but you hear like this very, even though they're doing it, when you hear him just doing this blurring tapping stuff, it's like, you're like, this is like twice that speed. What the? And almost impossible to decipher the whole thing and figure it out. I spent ages on that thing. So that one kind of blew open, my metal bass glass ceiling, as it were. I thought like, okay, once you reach here, you've kind of maxed out on the instrument. And it was like, guess again. And then on much later, when he did the first David Lee Roth album with Steve Vai, I heard the song Elephant Gun. And I was like, bass has been redefined here. He is flying through that whole song. And he's every bit as present with Steve Vai. He's playing the same licks as Steve Vai. Steve will play one and he matches it exactly. And then they trade solos. Like it's the first time I'd heard in a song, like the bass player takes a solo and then the guitar player takes a solo and then they play in unison together. I was like, what in the hell just happened here? And it's like a 3-minute song. They just absolutely fly through this thing. And it's, unison riffs, bass solos, bass just holding one note and doing like 64th notes all the way through this verse. I'm just going, yeah, it has been leveled up. This is the new high watermark. And it really kind of showed me like, I think that was the thing of do whatever you want and push it as far as you possibly can, because there is no limitation. That if you can figure out how to do it, you win. only you don't have to accept any conventional cap on anything or any expectation. This guy just came and, you know, kicked that door open and became like the bass Van Halen. And it was just insane. So, you know, seeing those two things go on made me go, the virtuoso level is as high as you want to push yourself.
Yeah.
And if you can do it, you can find a way to make it apply to something. So I have to
That's
say
amazing.
that one.
That's a great choice. Yeah. Well, it's great to experience that. And, you know, like you say, it's so passionately, like it takes you to that next level of like anything is possible. And it's really interesting how, again, like Geddy Lee, I don't know much about Sheehan, but I do know he's at a level of competency where he's on par with the virtuosos. Mm-hmm. And in my limited experience of him, there seems to be this really fine line between this. I think there's thunder or lightning distracts me. We don't usually get that, so I'm very distracted. Mm-hmm. There's a very fine line with virtuosos where it can be, it covers a lot of ground of musically it sounds good, technically proficient, entertaining, and interesting, without being too showmanship like Yngwie Malmsteen. Like you listen to Yngwie Malmsteen, you go, that's really cool. Oh, he's been doing it for 10 minutes now. I'm kind of bored. And I think maybe that's it with Sheehan. He doesn't outstay his welcome a lot of the time. And going back to maybe one of the first things we said, how to service the song. Mm-hmm. And I get that vibe from him that he only plays what he needs to play and he gets out, and that's it. And there's like this next level of proficiency you can aim for if you want to. And I know, like, you know, we've been speaking a long time now. I can tell that's what you're into. Like, how far can I push this? What can I do with this? It's totally you, and I get that. Mm-hmm.
Well, and again, let's keep on topic with bass and not, you know, how many hookers fit in the trunk or, you know, kind of thing.
Did you just make that up?
What? New
Never
phone.
Mind.
Who this?
Never mind.
But yeah, I've always like it, that. To me is kind of the why I'm attracted to metal. You know, that was always the thing of it, is it's always pushing. It's pushing with attitude. It's pushing with what the limits of the genre are. It's pushing with intensity, with aggression, with it's that thing of like every time I kick through a door, I start running towards the next one. And it's, you know, it's at least, you know, in the attitude I came up with, it was the music that had no boundaries, mm-hmm. except for the ones that, you know, you eventually accepted. And now it seems far more like there's a whole lot of boundaries on it. But I think I'll address that in a post this discussion review. But any wrap up comments on our list, and then I'll jump into that.
No, I mean, I think I said what I wanted to say. Yeah, it's been interesting just to hear the differences and I guess our perceptions of, you know, this. I imagine literally like a staircase, like what drives you to the next level, and it's just interesting to hear your take on that. Mm-hmm. I don't have that conversation with other musicians that aren't bass players because they have a different mindset and a different frame of mind. So it's been really interesting to hear what, you know, turned you onto bass and what leveled you up. So it's really interesting. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, same here. It's I would have expected a couple and didn't see a couple other coming. So it was cool.
What did you expect? Oh, don't tell me. Let's not go down that road. Let's not pull that thread.
If you want to destroy Alfie's sweater. I guess as a follow-up on this and something kind of timely, this ties a bit into what we've talked about the culture of metal and the recycling, and just kind of adds a bit into it. I went and checked out the Bass Strikes Back tour in the States, which is Death Angel, Exodus, and Testament.
Awesome.
Yeah, amazing show. completely sold out at a theater in Detroit, the Majestic. And there were some interesting takeaways on this one, for sure. One is that, again, I'm still continually astounded at how these guys play at this point in their career and their age, frankly. I mean, you've got, well, first of all, this brings one full back around. Death Angel. They opened up the show, and I felt bad for these guys in that they really kind of got screwed on sound and lighting. They basically played in just like straight open white lighting. And the sound man apparently had recently been, I don't know, standing directly next to a hurricane alert system horn or something. Hearing was completely gone. But they put on an absolutely great set. Mark Osagueda is one of the great metal frontmen. Just his command of an audience and his vocal skills are phenomenal. But on a couple episodes back, I referred to a club I used to be able to sneak into in my teen years when I was like 14 years old, going and seeing them. For people not familiar with Death Angel, these guys started really young. At the time that, if I remember correctly, that they came around, their oldest member was 17.
Really?
Not kidding. And they were a band that I had seen then. And I'm like, this band is as old as I am. And I'm a kid. It's like, I'm like 14, 15 years old seeing these guys doing it. And I was just completely freaked out about it. And they were great then. But so these guys have been playing and touring for decades, and they are as good as they ever were. I would argue their recent albums are the best of their career. And then it kind of leads into, all the bands are basically like that. I mean, you have Exodus. They crushed. I mean, absolutely crushed. Testament. Amazing. And every band putting on a show. I mean, these guys are physically active on stage. They're running around, Alex Skolnick from Testament running up on these risers and leaning out over the audience, just absolutely destroying his leads. Yeah, I mean, there was, I've seen much younger bands be way less entertaining live.
Yeah.
Like these guys grew up in an era where gazing at your shoes was not an option. And I see a lot of metal bands that do that stuff now. It's like their feet are just bolted to the floor and they're just staring at their goddamn instrument. These guys were involved with the audience, eye contact, everything the whole time. But I was really kind of shocked at the level of intensity of that audience. Death Angel had a great response, a little bit of a pit and everything. Exodus is kind of known for this stuff, but that place packed in, and I have not seen a pit like that in easy a decade.
Really?
I mean,
wow.
That thing opened up, and these dudes were not screwing around. I mean, the metal ethic was there. Like somebody goes down, you got picked up. That was there, but it was just moving like an absolute tornado. And then just the amount of crowd surfing. I haven't seen like crowd surfing in a really long time. And I can remember some parts of it where it was hard for me to see the band because all I could see were feet sticking up out of the audience. It was insane. And they're just rolling over, running out the sides, coming right back into the pit and jumping up again. And what I started noticing out of this was, well, you know what? Let me talk about the bands first and then get to that. But it showed me three bands coming from the same era that got their foundations in the same era, how much difference and variety there was in between them. That you look at a number of modern metal bands, they come out of the same era, they all sound the same.
Yeah.
There's very little difference stylistically, where it's like you had Death Angel, who were the most eclectic. They kind of experiment with things. They play, pretty functional and straight ahead thrash a lot, but they also have, you listen to their albums, they have acoustic classical style pieces and even just slow and melodic songs with like 4-part harmonies in them. You have oddball types of songs or songs that go on a little longer. Then you have Exodus, who is just no bullshit, straight to the bone thrash.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then you had Testament, which was interesting. It seemed like they were the most polished.
Yes.
They had a massive stage show. I mean, the lights were just absolutely crazy. And it was like watching a pro heavy metal show. To me, it was like in the same vein of like you would watch Judas Priest or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was intense. They're, headbanging and going and stuff, but it was a little less on the raw side and a little more on the, we're delivering some technically complex music. And, so our attitude is intense. It was aggressive, but slightly more refined.
Mm-hmm.
And to see that and see that the audience responded in kind too, like Death Angel, people were, in the pit and doing stuff, but they were kind of paying attention to the songs, singing along a bit more, stuff like that. Exodus was just, people were out for blood. It was just nuts. It was raw intensity, and the crowd adopted to that. And then Testament people were more, they had good pits, especially for like Over the Wall and Into the Pit and stuff. But it seemed like people were more listening to and watching, getting an appreciation of it, which they also had, Dave Lombardo was in the band now.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And he played on The Gathering album. And one of my all-time favorites from them is the song DNR, where he just goes nuts. And I interviewed him when I was a DJ a few years back, and Slayer and Testament were playing together, and I was like, any chance you'll sit in with them and maybe play something from The Gathering, like DNR? And he was like, yeah, that's a special song, man. I don't know if I could get that to happen, but that'd be really cool. And then I got to see him actually do it with the band, so that was a huge highlight for me. But he just crushed it all the way through that thing. And I'm just, like I said, watching these bands, and then you look at like the drummer in Exodus. The man had stomach cancer and had to have his entire stomach removed.
Good grief.
And he's brought himself back and did not miss a beat in that show. I mean, just plowed through some of their heaviest stuff. And their new album is phenomenal. All these guys have recent albums out, and they all crush. And I just, it gave me kind of this head check of what we've talked about before, where I've been like, something has changed in the culture of metal where these older guys are still a lot of times more intense than some of the newer guys. And what I found most interesting there is I saw a lot of guys like my age and older that, looked exactly like I did when I was 16 and stuff. A lot of guys had their battle vests on and, concert shirts, and it was that type of thing. But I was really kind of taken aback, and I was with my girl who hasn't been into the metal scene. She's only been into it as long as she's known me. And she noticed it even faster than I did, the amount of young people there. And like, these bands are averaging their late 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing kids in there that are like 14, 17. And I'm going, and like, they have the same thing on. They've got like, the concert shirt, long hair, jeans. And then I thought it was actually really cool too, of kids who just looked a bit more modern in style, or things they weren't kind of dipping back into the old thrash look and everything, but they were in there like leaping in the pit. And it really struck me that I think, one, it gave me a little hope, besides being an amazing goddamn tour. But that because things have just gotten so milquetoast and so crap, as far as, and I'm not just talking about music, I'm talking about the attitude and the intensity and the honesty of it, that there's a number of young people who are doing what other generations wouldn't do, which is going back into time to find that visceral honesty. And watching them connect with this music and watching, 15-year-old kids come to see bands that some of these dudes could be their grandfather, but they're leaping into the pit. They are going nuts. And I mean, you could tell they're into this stuff. They're screaming the choruses and fists in the air and everything. And, it was like, I felt like that Yoda moment when I'm like, there's hope. that obviously they've recognized something's missing, and you don't reconnect as a young person with a much older form or stuff that your parents would go and see unless it has something for you that newer stuff doesn't. And yeah, so again, every band played as well as you could ever ask to see. I mean, I can't remember a drop note the entire performance. Great energy, great presence, perfectly picked set lists, and just savagery from top to bottom. Everybody came on intense and left the stage intense. And an audience of, knowing that it sold out a week in advance.
Oh, really? Just a week?
Yeah. A week before the show, it was sold out. And that, you had young dudes in there, older guys my age, like every group was represented there. And they were all just balls out going for it. I just went, it gave me a lot of encouragement about what might be coming. That people are going, I'm tired of the overproduction. I'm tired of I make scary sounds, but I'm not really scary. Just the whole pose. It's like, I want to go back to the real. And these guys have proven over decades that this is who they are and what they do. And yeah, watching a great moment of seeing a guy who looks like he's in his 50s putting his hands down so that this kid, it looks like he's about 14, can step in them to jump up and, crowd surf over the audience. I'm like, that's what's up. Helping the new generation into it. And that was great. And yeah, it was like, there's so much emphasis on this, like, multiculturalism now and everybody being included. I'm like, y'all need to get to a metal show. As, it had to be 50% girls flying across the top of that. And yeah. And I'm not talking like older, this is what I did when I was younger. I'm seeing like 17-year-old girls crowd surfing over the top of that thing. There was no ethnicity not represented there. I'm looking around and going, we're all here. Like, this is great stuff. And everybody, having a fantastic time, crowd wise, and feeling like something's really going on. I've been to a number of actually really good shows recently, but crowd wise, that absolutely was the best thing I've seen in a while. And finally, after a lot of things that I think there is to critique about music and stuff now, I felt like this tour represented something. That it was, we've survived all the waves of crap. And we never changed, we never altered. And even the young people who wouldn't want to listen to their parents' music or something recognize this is the real stuff. And yeah, every band there just absolutely crushed it. If you're in the States, I think it may be coming to Europe actually, but if you're in the States and you miss this tour, I consider your metal card revoked. You have done yourself and the community a disservice. So it totally gets my recommendation, and going on the cultural thing too. It lines up with a lot of what we were saying, but it sounds like it's more than us that are just getting tired of what's going on. So,
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. I was sort of drawn. We've had waves of this conversation before, but I was more drawn to the what is it? Well, the fact that the performers are in their late 50s and maybe 60s and everything, and younger people are being drawn to that. And like you said, most young people aren't rushing to listen to their parents or maybe even their grandparents' musical taste. Like, you know, what you listen to, granddad? Not interested, you know, all that kind of thing. I'm really drawn to how young people are finding this music. Not that you can't find Testament or Exodus, you know, online. Of course you can, but it's not current. It's not on TV. And even I sound old. Like, young people aren't watching TV, so I don't know where they're finding this music. And like you say, they're obviously looking at something in the past that has taken them there to enjoy this. I don't know. I can't even put my finger on it. I don't know what it is. But you know, I if I listen to Exodus or Testament, there is just something very simple about their songs. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that the message is getting through to me loud and clear. I get this, and there's no bullshit. It's just thrash metal. There's no, you get in, you get out. It's that simple. I don't know if I'm making much sense. It's just like there's not much to it in that way. And maybe music is too complicated now, or it's trying to be too much for everybody. But one of thrash's strengths is that it's thrash. It's just you know, it's the same. I don't want to say the same or similar, or do you know what I mean? It's
to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I think that there's a thing too, though, of that people are hopefully, and this is, you know, pure conjecture on my part, but they're just getting, I think, tired of the misery. You know, it's like so much modern metal is built on, like, I was howling about in some of the other episodes where it's like this crying and this, it just, oh God, you know, go back to The Cure. That it's just become like this dark cloud hanging over metal now and stuff. And people are just going like, I don't want to be miserable all the time. And I don't want to apologize for being aggressive and going after life. And I want to go to a show and be able to act like a jackass and have a good time and jump around and feel like I got an experience. And, you know, and I don't want to feel like I'm watching, you know, a band playing the tracks, or that it's written by computers and they can barely play it live, and, you know, all this other just put together garbage. It's like, I want to go, I want to have an experience of something real, you know, real performances, real intensity, real community. And I think it's providing that. And like I said, I mean, people of all ages, ethnicities, and packed together in this place and just going batshit. And the bands, you could see the reaction with the bands. I mean, at certain points, I can remember pretty much all of the frontmen just almost laughing at how batshit the audience was going. They were just like, yeah, this is what we came here for. And like I said, really encouraging that I could sit, and for once I saw especially younger people getting into this style of music, and I could see the honesty of their interest in it. You know, just the huge grin on their face and just flying around the pit and, you know, doing the high five with each other when they come out, and the, you know, all this type of thing of like, you know, we are throwing down with the same energy that this music originally came out of.
I think you raised a good point earlier, prior to hitting record, of positive aggression. Just like, listen, I'm pent up, I'm angry, I'm not angry at you. I just wanna be angry together. Let's be angry together. We can be angry together. We get it out of our system. We help each other out. And there isn't that sort of environment. This is probably going to be a bit of a deep political turn now, but there's no safe environment. There's not really a good method for men to be aggressive in a positive manner. Go to the gym, do some sports. I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You put it well earlier about contact and wrestling, and there's that in there too, where young men, they just need to wrestle. They need to, like, you know, test their limits and see how far they can go. Oh no, you know what I mean? It's just like the physicality of it. And thankfully in metal, sorry, just very briefly, thankfully in metal, we have that community where, you know, don't punch someone in the face, but you can rough and tumble kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think there's the other side of this thing, in that, like I said, it wasn't just a sausage fest. And, you know, for all the things that so many people try and force these type of environments in, it's like they already exist. You just don't like them.
That's right. It doesn't adhere to you, does it?
It's, you know, like I said, tons of girls in the pit, tons of girls crowd surfing. There were, you know, unlike half of these other shows that I hear about, there's nobody getting molested. There's nobody, you know, these girls were treated with respect. And, you know, I would see them roll over the security rail, come running back, right back up on top, having the time of their life. Girls in the pit, throwing down, doing their thing. The guys, you know, treating them the same way they do everybody else. And it's like, yeah, there are communities who already honor this stuff. And, you know, as much as they, you know, talking about things being toxic or anything else, you know, these girls are coming and outletting their aggression. They're doing it right along with the guys. Everybody's having a good time. There's no malice to it or any of this other crap. All this stuff that they say never happens. It's happening. It's just not happening where you are, because you're not really that person. Yeah. I think it unmasks, you know, not to make too hard a political point, but it's like, how come all these horrible things that seem to happen always happen where you are, not where I am? And so, you know, when I can watch 16-year-old girls go for 5 rolls over the audience into the pit, having the time of their life, and high-fiving other guys, and, you know, jumping in the pit, and guys, you know, getting up on the stage and not assaulting the members of the band, and, you know, this whole thing going on from something that's supposed to be so dark and toxic.
Yeah,
like,
it's ironic, that, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's like, no, maybe the reason that people are acting out in these dark ways is because they don't have the outlets, because you stomp them out. And I think that you may have kind of gone onto a side road that leads to that further topic. Maybe it is that these young kids are attracted to this, and they're finding it because it's like they desire that at that age, just like we did. And they're like, finally a place I can do this. And I don't have some helicopter mom over me, or somebody telling me, don't be aggressive, you're a bad boy, or some of this, you know, bullshit, or girls going like, you know, don't be around those guys, it's dangerous. They all just throw down in a room, have the time of their life, and just wreck the place along with these bands. And it becomes this, you know, intense communal experience that everybody walks out, you know, having been the better for, and great music was had along with it. So it was really interesting set of observations over it, and a tour that, man, even if you just went there and stood and watched and listened, you're going to get just as much, because, you know, world-class stuff going on. Absolutely fantastic performances. I can't throw a single thing at each band. And like I said, I really enjoyed that each band had its own kind of thing. You know, they came up in the same scene and same era, but they all had a very distinct stamp on themselves, and the audience, you could tell, reacted to them accordingly. So, you know, it wasn't like, you know, 3 of the same band in a row. It was, you're going to get 3 distinct experiences. So Man, don't miss this tour. It was a good one.
I saw Testament a couple of years ago, and again, like a bit like Rush, my girl is into Testament. She has been for years, and she turned me on to them. I was like, yeah, this is cool. Oh, all right, yeah, let's go see them live. And it was a very, very small venue, and I was blown away. They are excellent in every regard. You know, the songs are easy to just get into. The musicianship is perfect. It's the full package. They're entertaining. I walked away mind blown. And like I said, I've never been a massive fan, but I was thoroughly impressed with that show. And, you know, that was a couple of years ago. So if they're still doing it, you need to go out and see them if you haven't.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, great show. And I've actually seen some footage from different tour stops popping up on YouTube. So if you need a sample of what you are missing at your own peril, they're out there. So check them out.
I thought you said it was the, what was the name of the tour?
Bass Strikes Back.
If we said Bass Strikes Back, I was like, oh, cool. Wait a minute. No, that's not right. No, but someone should do Bass Strikes Back. I'd watch that.
That'll be me just touring in a Darth Vader outfit.
Just slapping.
That is one thing you will not see. All right, then. Well, like I said, I think that wraps another Rodney and Alfie throwdown. So, as always, you can find me for your usual monkey poo flinging over at Rodney McGee. And, of course, in the comments here on Rodney and Alfie Talk Metal.
And you will find me, Alfie Williams, on YouTube if you type in Witch Bass. And as I keep saying, more content is coming. It's coming. Hence the tired, drawing look on my face. I've been working on it.
Right. Well, yes. Soon the content constipation will clear.
Yes.
And there will be a veritable mudslide of Alfie and Witch Bass. So
thanks for that.
So to quickly dodge out of the path of that, been fun. Looking forward to talking to you guys in the comments, and I will see you next time.
See you later.